Hello everyone. My name is Elise. Welcome to my channel. We are going to be doing a new vlog series today. We're kicking it off with the very first episode, and that is, as the title would suggest, my Sherlock Holmes series. So last year I was gifted all of the Sherlock Holmes books, and I plan on reading them all in 2023, and I've decided that I'm going to vlog that experience. Now, I'm going to be reading them in publication order, and I do have a collection that has all of the books broken up based on publication date. So each short story collection is its own separate book, and then each novel is its own separate book. So the very first one is A Study in Scarlet, and you can see I have the headline editions here, which I love because they are broken up in that way, like book by book. It's all separate. So this is the very first one, A Study in Scarlet, and this is a novel. This is also the shortest of any of the books, including the short story collection. So this is definitely the shortest one, and I'm very excited to get into this project and start my experience reading Sherlock Holmes because, as I've said on the channel before, I love Sherlock Holmes. I adore that character. It's one of my favorite characters of all time. I love murder mysteries, and I mean, like, she is the moment. She is an icon. We love her. So I'm very excited to start this project. Yeah, and then also you can see the background is a little bit different, and I'm in Colorado to visit my family. So this will sort of also be like a Colorado vlog. So let's go ahead and talk about this book a little bit before we get started. So as I said, this is the first one that was published. This was published in 1887. This one is, of course, the introduction between Sherlock and Watson. So Watson is looking for a place to live, and Sherlock is trying to rent out a room, and thus they meet and their friendship buddy duo ensues from there. So this one, I think, follows death that happens that feels very mysterious, as they always do. And I think there's a body that's found in a derelict house. And the interesting thing about it is that there's no visible wounds on the body, and there's no sign of struggle. But on the wall, written in blood, is Rache. I think that's how you pronounce it, because I think it's coming from the German pronunciation in here, which means revenge. So very intriguing already, and Sherlock is going to be on the case, and now that Watson is there, he's sort of coming along for the ride. So I am going to read the beginning of this, and I do think the beginning of this one, because if you don't know, now you know, these are all written as if they're journals from Dr. Watson. So that's the framework of them. So I think at the very beginning of this is going to be setting up the journal. So let's go ahead and have a peek and see what's going on here. So, okay, yes, so it says part 1, and then it says, being a reprint from the reminiscences of John H. Watson, MD, late of the Army Medical Department. And of course, he was a doctor in the Army. So that is what it says on the kind of part 1 page. And then the next page, we start chapter 1, and it's titled Mr. Sherlock Holmes. So I'll read the first few sentences out here. In the year 1878, I took my degree of Doctor of Medicine of the University of London and proceeded to Netley to go through the course prescribed for surgeons in the Army. Having completed my studies there, I was duly attached to the 5th Northumberland Fusiliers as assistant surgeon. The regiment was stationed in India at the time, and before I could join it, the Second Afghan War had broken out. On landing at Bombay, I learned that my corps had advanced through the passes and was already deep in the enemy's country. I followed, however, with many other officers who were in the same situation as myself, and succeeding in reaching Kandahar in safety, where I found my regiment, and at once entered upon my new duties. That's the opening paragraph. So I think this is really just giving some background info on Watson to set up the storyline from there. But yeah, I will go ahead and read the first chapter and then check in with you to give you a little bit of the initial setup of the book. And this is a short one, so I don't want to do too many check-ins late because I don't want to talk about the plot later on. So I'll read the first chapter, check back in, and in the meantime, I will show you a little bit of B-roll of me kind of coming to Colorado and some of what we've gotten up to thus far, and come back. So I will see you then. Bye. All right, this isn't the best angle, but it's gonna have to do. So I have read the first chapter of A Study in Scarlet. So I'm gonna give you a little recap. And as I was reading from the beginning, this is very much setting up Watson, but it does include the initial meeting with Sherlock. So it's very like Sherlockian the way that they meet. Watson runs into a friend from the army and he explains that he is looking for lodgings from this friend, and this friend says he knows this very interesting man that he occasionally works with in the labs, who was explaining that he was looking for someone to rent a room with the other day. So he's sort of like hesitant to introduce them, and Watson keeps trying to pry about why, and he basically, ooh, I just opened the door, and he basically says that he's just sort of like puzzling and a mystery and pretty intense. But Watson insists that he meets him and they go to the lab together. And when they arrive, Sherlock has just discovered a new way to test bloodstains and is kind of having his eureka epiphany moment when Watson walks in. So he sort of explains to Watson how he's now discovered a way to tell if there is blood, even if the blood is old, that has been soaked into a substance or a fabric or anything like that. They get into their vices and basically say like, here's all the bad stuff about me, here's all the bad stuff about me. Do you think we can live together? And they agree that they will go and look at this place together. And as long as the lodgings are right, then they will be roomies. So that's the first chapter. We kind of leave off where they're going to meet at noon the next day to go look at the apartment together. So yeah, very fun to get to see the meeting between Watson and Sherlock. I very much enjoyed that, and I can't wait for the case to officially start. I'm sure the blood testing will come into the case, and that's why it was put at the very beginning, but we shall see. So yeah, I think I'll read some more. I'm not sure how much more I'll read before I do my next check-in. It might be like halfway through and then do another check-in. Yeah, enjoying it so far. Excited to get into the murder mystery plot of it. And yeah, I'll show you some B-roll footage of what I get into next. I'm not sure what that's gonna be, but you will get to see it. So see y'all in a little bit. You got to see some fun B-roll footage. Well, at least fun for me. I don't know if it's fun to watch, but my family and I went to Topgolf. So you got to see all of my family. I was with my mom, my dad, and my brother. So you get to see all of them. My brother took the footage of me and he took it the wrong way. So it's why it's not in there. But not his fault. He didn't know. So yeah, that was super fun. Had a great time there. I'm definitely like sore in my rib cage because I'm just not used to moving that way all the time. But yeah, we did that. And then I went to see my best friend afterwards and got to hang out with her a bit. Just had a few little quick clips because it was very late at night of us together. So yeah, hope you enjoyed that. So I have reached part 2. I didn't even know that there was a part 2, but I have reached it, and it's basically exactly halfway through the book. A lot has happened, so basically all the mystery has unfolded since the last time that I've talked to you. And it has been very interesting. I will say this isn't a spoiler by any means, but there is a second body that ends up showing up. So that kind of adds to the intrigue of the case. At this point, Sherlock has solved the case, but you haven't received any of the information of how he solved it or what's actually happened. So I'm surprised that the last half of the book is going to be like all explanation there. I don't know if something else is going to happen or something like that, but yeah, we're halfway through and Sherlock has like announced that he knows what has happened and is open to receiving questions about it. So that is what has happened so far. I'm very much enjoying it. It's super fun. And I love getting the little explanations of how he figures out clues along the way. Because this is the first one, I'm sure this will continue, but because it's the first one, it's happening a lot that he's often explaining to Watson, and Watson is sort of like enamored at how he's doing this because he's just met him and has never seen deduction skills like this before. And then Holmes is very like chuffed with Watson being impressed by him. So yeah, that's an interesting part as well. It's a little bit cheesy, but like I'm down to ride with that. I think the rest of the plot, I don't really want to share any specifics because I don't want it to be spoilers. But yeah, just generally enjoying it so far. I am, again, curious about how the last half is going to go. When I finish up and do my final review, I'll kind of let you know if that was all truly just like explanation and if it was interesting enough to be half of the book or not. But yeah, I'm curious to see how that's going to go. Lestrade and what's his name? Gregson, I think, are the two detectives that tend to show up a lot in Sherlock Holmes stuff. And yeah, so they're both on the case. So you sort of get to see them like fumbling around and coming to the wrong conclusions. And Sherlock is like just knowing that he knows the answer and they don't. So he's kind of like goading them in a way. But yeah, I will say one thing that people might want to know about this that I didn't know going in is there is the death of an animal in this. It's not like super gruesome or anything, but I wasn't expecting it to be there. And I think some people might be upset about it. So who knows? But that is in here if you care about that. But yeah, so I will check back in with you once I have finished the book. I'm not sure what I'm going to end up showing you for B-roll after this. I think tomorrow we might be like going on a walk and we're going to dinner at a friend's. Potentially might be doing some other things, so I'll let you know what we end up getting up to. The next time I see you about the book will be when I have finished it. So I will see you all then. I got too close, didn't I, Ruby? As you can tell, and I'm ready to wrap up this vlog because I have finished A Study in Scarlet, so I will tell you my thoughts. I know, I think the B-roll footage was like basically a dog and then me getting back home. For like the last couple days of the trip, I barely filmed anything, which I'm okay with. I'm glad I got what I got. But yeah, there was like a lovely view of Mount Rainier from my flight while it was sunset, so that was gorgeous. And that dog was precious. Her name is Ruby. Some of my parents' friends invited us over for dinner, which was amazing. They made homemade salad with salad dressing. They made paella and they had blueberry cake for dessert. Wow, it was great. But Ruby was the star of the show, so I'm glad I got a couple action shots of her. So let's go ahead and get into this book. Now, last I checked in with you, which was very shortly ago for you, but a little bit longer for me, I was curious about how the last half of the book was going to go, because basically Sherlock had said he knew what had happened and was like in his deduction type of phase where he explains how everything worked out. So I wasn't sure, and this does take a departure. So part 2 is a big departure in the novel, and basically you go to an entirely different narrative that is supposed to unravel the motive for you. So instead of Sherlock doing that himself, which is much more typical, I think, you go to this entirely different storyline and you get to see what happened that led to the motive of wanting to kill these people. I will say, this doesn't give any spoilers away, but it ends up like you get into the history of Mormonism, which is kind of bizarre when you're in that narrative. Mormonism doesn't have anything to do with like the way that anyone was killed or anything like that, but you do get into the history of Mormonism. So that was like a really kind of like bizarre but mildly intriguing storyline to follow. This wasn't my favorite Sherlock Holmes ever, and it is mostly because of that second half departure into a totally different narrative with like totally different characters, and Sherlock and Watson aren't there at all. Slightly less intriguing to follow, and I think it was a little bit too long for what it was. I think it could have been shortened dramatically. But overall, I still enjoyed this. It was like a middle of the road Sherlock for me. But yeah, I enjoyed A Study in Scarlet. At the very end, there's like a conclusion chapter, and you get some explanation from Sherlock to Watson, as it normally is, of how he deduced certain clues to mean certain things. So you still get a little bit of that at the end. It's very brief. And some of them, I feel like I remember this from the short stories, are a little bit of a stretch. I feel like some of the adaptations have made it sound much more scientific, but you know, back in the day, some of them were a little bit of a stretch. I was able to suspend my disbelief for that. This overall was very fun and enjoyable. It was a nice introduction back into the Sherlock Holmes world, and it was so fun to get to see the meeting of Holmes and Watson, because I had never read about that before, because I've never read this one. So I enjoyed getting that kind of backstory to their relationship and how they met. You can definitely tell that this was serialized when it first came out, because each chapter does sort of leave on a cliffhanger to make you want to read the next week's one. So I think that's really fun. I think that makes the pacing really engaging. So yeah, those are pretty much my thoughts on A Study in Scarlet. I hope you enjoyed this vlog and getting to see some of my time in Colorado with my family. Let me know if you have read this one, and if so, what you thought about it. I'm very excited to get to the next one. The next one, I believe, is another novel. So that will be the next one on the docket in this Sherlock Holmes series. So I will see you all when I pick that one up. Bye.